The stars over Mars burned red like the dust below. Captain Laura Mitchell stood inside the command room of the Terran Defense Station and watched silent lights blink across the dark sky. Her hands were steady, but her heart felt heavy. She knew something was coming. The Galactic Council had sent more ships near the solar borders. They called it a peace patrol, but everyone on Earth knew it was not. They wanted to show power. They wanted to show that humans were still small and could be kept quiet. Laura looked at the long lines of data on the screen. Every signal told her that peace was ending soon. The Galactic Council had many races. Some looked like humans, others like living stone or floating mist. They had great power and huge fleets. For hundreds of years they ruled the known galaxy. When humans first reached the stars, the Council had smiled. They had sent gifts and promises. But when Earth asked for equal rights, the smile faded. Humans were told they were too young and too violent. The Council gave them only a small place to live. Many on Earth felt insulted. Still, they waited and worked. They sent more ships, more explorers, more scientists. They tried to prove that humans were ready. Then came the day of the Mars accident. A new colony ship named Horizon Dawn was landing with thousands of people ready to build the first true city outside Earth. The Council drones came without warning. They said it was a safety inspection, but one drone fired by mistake. The ship exploded in the sky. Half of Mars saw the light before it faded into dust. Families screamed. The Council called it a mistake. They promised an apology, but no justice came. The families received no answer. Earth watched the news in silence, then in rage. Laura remembered the faces of the people on the Horizon Dawn. She had trained with some of them. She had spoken to them about the new world they wanted to build. They had hope. Now their names were written in stone. Laura closed her eyes and saw the fire again. She swore she would not forget. And she was not alone. Across Earth, from small villages to great cities, people marched in the streets. They demanded truth. They demanded strength. The old government saw the world uniting in anger. For the first time in human history, all nations spoke as one voice. It was then that the Terran Federation was born. It started with a simple message. No more submission. No more silence. The United Earth leaders called for a new age. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, and dreamers came together. They built a single fleet, a single defense. Laura joined the first command group. Her ship, the Valiant, became one of the first symbols of this new power. Training was hard. The Council had spies and eyes everywhere. Every plan had to be hidden. The fleet grew under the cover of silence. In shipyards deep below the oceans and in secret bases under the moon, humans built what they could. The Galactic Council did not believe it. They thought humans were still divided by old politics and greed. They sent warnings. They sent sanctions. They cut off trade routes. They told other races not to deal with Earth. But each punishment only made humans more determined. Scientists worked day and night. New weapons were tested in secret zones near Jupiter. Engines faster than light were tuned by engineers who had once built racing ships for fun. Earth became a forge. Fire burned in the hearts of its people. Laura stood one evening before the giant window in the control tower. The blue sphere of Earth shone in the distance, calm and beautiful. It was strange to think that such a peaceful world could carry so much anger inside it. But anger had turned into resolve. She watched the reflection of the crew behind her. Young faces, tired but brave. They all had someone they wanted to protect. They all had something to fight for. Laura knew what she would do when the time came. News spread that the Council was planning a blockade. They would send fleets to cut off Earth from the rest of space. It would mean hunger and isolation. Laura attended the emergency meeting with other captains and scientists. Admiral Ethan Brooks, a calm man with sharp eyes, spoke softly but with power. He said the Council wanted to break their spirit. He said they would not succeed. The room was silent when he ended with one line. We stand together or we fall apart. No one needed more words. The plan was set. The Federation would not wait for the Council to strike first. Months passed. Skies above Earth filled with quiet movement. Cargo ships brought supplies to the hidden shipyards. Soldiers trained in orbit. The first wave of new warships was almost ready. Each was named after a lost colony or a fallen hero. Laura was assigned to lead the defense network around Mars. It was both an honor and a burden. Every day she looked at the red surface and remembered what had started this war. She could not sleep some nights. The faces would come back to her. The fire, the screams, the silence after. But she pushed on. Everyone did. On a cold morning, alarms began to sound. Unknown signals entered the edge of the solar system. It was a council fleet. They said they were only patrolling, but everyone knew the truth. Laura gave the order to stand ready. The Valiant and other ships moved into position. The first shot came not from Earth. It came from the Council again. A bright beam struck one of the defense satellites near Saturn. The explosion lit the dark like a small sun. In that moment, history changed. Humanity was no longer waiting. The order came from the Federation command. Defend at all costs. Laura sent the command through her ship. Weapons charged. Shields rose. Every crew member knew what it meant. They were about to face an enemy older and stronger than them. But fear turned to fire. The battle lasted hours. Ships danced through the void. Missiles streaked like falling stars. One council cruiser exploded after another. Laura gave clear orders. Her voice stayed calm. The Valiant took hits but never stopped. When the dust cleared, the first council fleet was in ruins. The victory came at a cost. Many human ships were lost. But Earth had made a mark. The council had never expected resistance like this. They called for a meeting, but Earth refused. There was no more trust left. The news spread across the galaxy. For the first time, other species began to question the Council's power. Some whispered that the humans had awakened something dangerous. Others called it justice. When Laura returned to Earth, she was greeted not as a hero, but as a symbol. Children waved flags. Families cried. Scientists cheered. But deep down, she felt only sorrow and purpose. She knew this was only the beginning. The Council would come again, and next time they would bring everything they had. She stood on the balcony of the Federation Hall and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, fleets were forming. Somewhere, someone was planning revenge. But she smiled softly. So was Earth. And when that day came, she knew humanity would be ready to answer. The air inside the underground base was cold and dry. Admiral Ethan Brooks walked through the long tunnel that led to the heart of the Federation's hidden shipyard. The sound of machinery echoed around him. Sparks fell from welding arcs as engineers worked on giant frames of metal. Each one would become a warship. Earth was no longer building for exploration. It was building for survival. Brooks stopped near a large viewing window where a half-built vessel floated in the dark dock. It was massive and shaped like a blade. That ship was the Leviathan. The future of Earth's defense rested on its hull. Dr. Amanda Lewis stood beside him. She was young but known for her sharp mind. She had once studied energy fields for peaceful use, but after the Council attack, she turned her work toward weapons. She looked at the ship with quiet pride and fear. The Leviathan was unlike anything humans had built before. It used a new kind of power source taken from research into wormholes. If it worked, it could destroy an entire fleet alone. If it failed, it could take half the system with it. Amanda told Brooks that they were close to success but needed more time. Brooks nodded. He knew time was what they had the least of. Across the base, hundreds of workers were busy. Some were scientists, some were miners, some were soldiers learning to fly new machines. Every person knew what was at stake. Earth had stood alone for too long. Supplies were low. Trade routes were cut. People lived on strict rations. But they did not complain. Every voice carried the same message. Never again. Every night when lights dimmed and machines went silent, songs about freedom and unity echoed through the halls. The sound gave Brooks strength. On the surface of the moon, another base was being built. It was smaller but faster. There, Captain Laura Mitchell trained new pilots. She had become known as the Iron Captain. Her calm voice during the first battle had been recorded and shared across Earth. To the soldiers, she was a living reminder that humans could fight and win. She pushed her team hard. She told them that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Her pilots learned to move as one. They trained in silence, their ships cutting through the dark sky like silver arrows. Far beyond Earth, the Galactic Council was not silent. Reports of human resistance had spread across every world. Some members wanted to crush Earth completely. Others feared that such violence would unite more species against them. The High Speaker of the Council, a tall being of blue light, called for an emergency session. In a vast chamber of glass and gold, alien voices argued. They said humans were dangerous. They said humans were unpredictable. One elder warned that humans had something no other species had. They called it the will to endure. The room fell quiet at those words. None wanted to admit that fear had begun to grow among them. While the council debated, humans worked. Amanda's team faced constant challenges. The Leviathan's reactor needed rare materials only found on moons controlled by the council. Smuggling became the only option. Small stealth ships were sent on dangerous missions. Many never returned. Yet each success brought Earth closer to completion. One night, Amanda watched the power readings rise on her screen. The numbers were steady. She smiled for the first time in months. The Leviathan's heart was alive. Brooks visited the ship again soon after. The dock lights reflected off the smooth metal. Engineers cheered when they saw him. He did not give speeches. He simply said thank you. Then he told them what came next. The Leviathan would be tested near Neptune, far from sensors and eyes. Laura and her squad would provide escort. If the test worked, the council would face a weapon they could not imagine. The day of the test was clear and cold. Stars looked sharp against the black. The Leviathan moved slowly from the dock. Its engines glowed with a pale white light. Inside the control room, Amanda stood beside Brooks, her hands trembling slightly. Systems were green. Power was stable. Brooks gave the order. The reactor activated. For a moment, everything went silent. Then a deep hum filled the ship. Energy rippled through space. A beam of light shot out and hit a dead asteroid nearby. The rock vanished into dust. No explosion, no sound, just disappearance. Amanda whispered that it had worked. Brooks said nothing. He only looked at the readings. Humanity now had a weapon that could turn a planet into ash. Back on Earth, news of the success was kept secret. Only the top officers knew. The Federation continued to build smaller ships and defenses to keep the illusion of weakness. The Council spies still sent reports claiming humans were struggling. They did not know what waited in the dark. Laura led more missions to secure outer defenses. Her pilots grew faster and braver. One of them, a young man named Ryan, became like a son to her. He asked if they could really win against so many. She told him that numbers did not decide victory. Heart did. Months turned into a year. The Council's patience began to fade. They launched new probes near Earth's borders. Some were destroyed by hidden turrets. Others disappeared. When they demanded answers, Earth stayed silent. That silence scared them more than any weapon. It meant humans were planning something. They were right. The Federation Council met in the deep chamber under Mount Everest. Brooks presented the final plan. Earth would not wait to be attacked again. They would strike first. It was a risky move, but he knew they could not survive another blockade. Amanda worked day and night to make sure the Leviathan was ready. She slept little and ate less. When she closed her eyes, she saw fire. She remembered the lost colony on Mars. She remembered the faces of the dead. That memory pushed her forward. One evening, Laura came to visit. They sat together in silence, both too tired to speak. Then Amanda said that humans were about to change history. Laura replied that history had already changed the day the first drone fired. They both knew the truth. There was no turning back. The launch day arrived. The Leviathan, now complete, stood like a mountain of steel. Thousands watched the live feed from around the world. Brooks gave the order and the ship rose into the sky. Engines thundered. Clouds burned away. For a brief moment, every person on Earth looked up and felt hope. They did not see a weapon. They saw proof that humans could build something greater than fear. The Leviathan disappeared into space, heading for its first mission. Somewhere beyond the stars, the Council would soon feel its presence. In the Council chambers, alarms began to sound. Reports flooded in of missing fleets near the Orion Spur. Entire convoys gone without a trace. Panic spread. The high speaker called for calm, but no one listened. They demanded answers. Who was attacking them? The answer came in the form of a signal. It was short and simple. It said humanity remembers. The Council members looked at each other in disbelief. Fear turned into shock. They realized that Earth was not just defending itself anymore. It was coming for them. Far away in the dark void between stars, Laura watched from her ship as the Leviathan's engines burned brighter than suns. She knew the time of waiting was over. Humanity had hidden long enough. The Council had made a mistake thinking humans would bow forever. Now the galaxy would learn what Earth's vengeance truly meant. And in that silent moment before the first strike, Laura smiled. It was not a smile of joy. It was a promise. The promise that the fallen would be remembered and justice would finally begin. The stars looked quiet, but war had already begun. No one in the Council could deny it anymore. Reports came from across their borders. Stations gone dark. Fleets missing. Trade routes silent. They searched for answers but found only wreckage. Pieces of their proud ships floated cold among the stars. There was no sign of who had done it. But deep down they already knew. The humans had struck back. The same species they once called reckless had become their worst fear. Admiral Ethan Brooks watched the screens inside the Federation flagship. His face was calm, though his heart carried the weight of every choice. The Leviathan had proven its power in secret attacks. It could appear and vanish faster than their enemies could react. Amanda Lewis stood beside him and read the data. Her hands shook as she looked at the energy readings. Each destroyed fleet meant lives lost, even if they were enemies. But she also knew what would happen if they failed. The Council would come to Earth again and finish what they started. Captain Laura Mitchell led the smaller strike groups. Her ships moved like shadows through the void. They hit enemy supply lines and then disappeared. The Council called them ghosts. Her pilots followed her every command. They trusted her voice more than any machine. Ryan, her best pilot, always took the most dangerous missions. He said someone had to lead by example. Laura warned him to be careful. He only smiled and said that fear had no place in space. She admired his courage even when it hurt to see him go. The first major victory came near the rim of Orion. The Council had a stronghold there, a fortress world filled with weapons and ships. Laura's squad arrived first, hiding behind moons and asteroids. When the Leviathan appeared, the enemy never saw it coming. Its first shot split the sky with light. Shields that were thought unbreakable fell in seconds. Council ships scattered, but nowhere was safe. The battle was short and brutal. When it ended, the fortress burned. The humans left a signal beacon behind with a message. "We are not prey." The message spread faster than any weapon. It reached every corner of the galaxy. Some races began to question the Council's rule. They whispered that maybe humans were not monsters but fighters for freedom. Others grew afraid. The Council demanded unity but found only doubt. Their power was breaking. Inside their grand chambers, voices rose in anger. The High Speaker shouted that humans must be crushed before they spread rebellion, but their fleets were in ruins and their courage was fading. Back on the Leviathan, Amanda watched the transmission of the battle again. The ship's power amazed her but also scared her. She spoke to Brooks and said that this weapon could destroy too much. He listened quietly and said that power alone did not decide the future. It was how they used it. He promised that Earth would not become like the Council. They were not fighting to conquer. They were fighting to be free. Amanda nodded, but she knew how thin that line could be. War had a way of changing people. Laura's fleet kept moving forward. Every victory brought more risk. The Council began sending traps. Some human ships vanished. Others returned damaged and silent. Laura wrote letters to the families of lost crew members. She told them that their loved ones were heroes. At night she sat alone, staring at the stars. She wondered how many more would die before it was over. Yet she never showed weakness in front of her team. They needed her strength more than ever. On a distant moon, a small human base picked up a strange signal. It was not from the Council. It was from another race. They called themselves the Varn and they offered help. They said they had suffered under the Council's rule for centuries. They wanted to share information about weak points in Council defenses. Brooks sent a team to meet them. Laura volunteered to lead the mission. Amanda joined her to study their technology. When they arrived, they found the Varn to be tall and pale with voices that echoed softly. They showed maps of hidden Council stations and weapon caches. Amanda checked the data and confirmed it was real. The Varn asked only for freedom in return. Brooks agreed. The alliance with the Varn changed everything. With their maps, human fleets moved faster and hit harder. One by one, Council strongholds fell. Panic spread in their ranks. Some commanders refused to fight. Others fled. The High Speaker ordered all remaining fleets to regroup near Vega. It was their last defense line. If Vega fell, the road to their core worlds would be open. The Council believed humans would not dare to attack such a strong position. They were wrong. The Federation Council met in secret. Brooks stood before the leaders and explained the plan. The Vega system was heavily armed but also overconfident. If they could break through the first wave, the rest would crumble. Amanda showed the calculations. The Leviathan could lead the charge, supported by Laura's strike wings. It was risky, but it was the only way to end the war quickly. Silence filled the room. Then one by one the leaders agreed. Earth would take the fight to Vega. The preparation took weeks. Every ship was checked and armed. Messages were sent to families without saying where the fleets were going. The soldiers wrote letters they might never send. Laura walked among her crew before departure. She spoke to Ryan, who was cleaning his helmet. She told him to stay close during the battle. He laughed and said he would watch her back. Amanda stayed on the Leviathan, monitoring the systems. Brooks spent his nights in the command room staring at old pictures of Earth. He wanted to remember what they were fighting for. When the day came, the human fleet gathered beyond Neptune. Hundreds of ships glowed with blue engines. The Leviathan stood at the center like a silent giant. Brooks gave the signal and they jumped together through space. The stars bent and vanished. In seconds they arrived near Vega. The sight before them was like nothing they had seen. The Council's fleet covered the system like a wall of metal. Thousands of ships, countless weapons. Brooks took a deep breath and ordered attack. The sky turned into fire. Beams of light crossed the void. Explosions bloomed like flowers. Laura led her squad through the chaos, dodging and weaving between enemy fire. She gave short commands, clear and firm. Ryan followed her lead, taking down fighters twice his size. On the Leviathan, Amanda monitored power levels. The ship's core hummed like thunder. Brooks ordered the main cannon to charge. When it fired, space itself seemed to tear open. A massive Council battleship vanished in a flash. Cheers erupted across the fleet. But the enemy kept coming. Hours turned into an endless storm. Ships on both sides burned. The Leviathan took hits that shook the hull. Amanda rerouted power to shields. Laura's voice came through the radio asking for support. Brooks sent reinforcements. At one point, Ryan's ship was hit. He lost control but still managed to crash into an enemy cruiser, destroying it. Laura saw the explosion and went silent for a moment. Then she whispered goodbye before pushing forward again. As the battle dragged on, the Council's formation broke. Their ships began to retreat. The humans had done what no one believed possible. Vega was theirs. When the last explosion faded, silence filled the comms. Brooks looked at the field of wreckage. He ordered all surviving ships to regroup. They had won, but the cost was heavy. Amanda cried quietly, thinking of the lives lost. Laura returned to her ship, her face calm though her heart ached. She thought of Ryan and the others who would never see Earth again. When the news reached the galaxy, everything changed. The Council's power was broken. Worlds once afraid began to rise. The High Speaker called for peace talks, his voice trembling. But humanity was not ready to trust again. They would decide what came next on their own terms. Brooks sent a message back to Earth. It said only 4 words. Vega is ours now. And with that message, the galaxy realized that the age of fear had ended. The age of humanity had begun. The stars around Vega were still filled with smoke and broken ships. The silence after the great battle felt heavy and endless. Admiral Ethan Brooks stood on the bridge of the Leviathan and watched the field of wreckage drift slowly through the dark. Pieces of metal spun like ghosts. Thousands of lives were gone, both human and alien. He knew that victory had come with a price too high to count. But there was no time for grief. The Council would not accept defeat so easily. He ordered the crew to repair and rearm. The war was not over yet. Dr. Amanda Lewis worked beside the engineers, checking systems and stabilizing the Leviathan's reactor. She had dark circles under her eyes but refused to rest. The ship had held through the worst battle in human history, but its power core was near collapse. She told Brooks they had to shut it down soon or risk losing everything. He said they could not stop now. Scouts had found signs of a new Council fleet gathering near the edge of the system. They had to move before the enemy regained strength. Captain Laura Mitchell's smaller fleet had taken heavy losses. Many pilots were gone and the survivors were exhausted. Still, she stood tall and calm. Her voice over the comms kept the remaining crews steady. She looked at the empty seat where Ryan used to sit and felt a deep ache. He had been brave until the very end. She promised herself that his sacrifice would not be forgotten. When Brooks called for her report, she answered without hesitation. The fleet was ready to fight again. In the Council's grand chamber, chaos ruled. The High Speaker shouted orders to silence the arguments, but no one listened. The walls that once echoed with pride now trembled with fear. Their fleets were shattered, their allies silent, and their supply lines cut off. Some members demanded peace talks. Others wanted to destroy Earth completely, even if it meant burning half the galaxy. The High Speaker finally called for quiet. He said that the humans had forced their hand. A final battle would decide everything. They would gather their last forces and strike at the heart of the Terran Federation. Back on Earth, people watched the stars and waited. News of the Vega victory had spread everywhere. Crowds filled the streets, waving flags and chanting. Children painted ships on walls. Factories worked day and night to send supplies to the fleet. But behind the joy was fear. Everyone knew the Council would come again. The Federation leaders met in secret under the mountain base. Brooks joined them through a hololink from the Leviathan. Amanda stood behind him, silent and pale. She showed data that confirmed the Council was gathering a massive fleet near the edge of the Orion Arm. It would reach human space in weeks. The leaders asked if Earth could survive another war. Brooks answered that they had no choice. If they stopped now, everything they had fought for would be lost. Amanda suggested a plan that shocked everyone. She said they could take the fight directly to the Council's core worlds before the fleet was ready. If they destroyed the main command, the war could end faster. It was a dangerous idea. The Leviathan's core was unstable and the crew was tired. But Brooks agreed. He said humans had always won by doing what others thought impossible. Laura was called to lead the vanguard for the mission. Her ships would move first to clear a path. She accepted without hesitation. When Amanda told her that the Leviathan might not survive another full power cycle, Laura only nodded. She said that victory was never without risk. Before the fleet departed, she walked alone through the hangar and looked at each ship. She remembered every pilot's name and every story. She whispered a quiet promise to bring them home if she could. The human fleet left Neptune's orbit and entered deep space. The jump drives flared, and in moments they were gone from the solar system. The journey was silent and long. Inside the ships, the crew slept in short shifts. Some prayed. Others wrote messages to families. Amanda spent every hour monitoring the Leviathan systems. She could feel the reactor's pulse through the floor. It was like the heartbeat of a living creature. Brooks moved from deck to deck, speaking with crew members. He told them that history was watching. No matter what happened next, their courage would be remembered. When they reached the outer edge of the Council's territory, the stars grew bright and dense. Ahead lay the capital system, home to the Council's main world, a giant city that stretched across an entire planet. The defenses were massive. Energy grids surrounded it like a glowing cage. Thousands of ships formed a barrier around the world. Amanda whispered that it was like staring into a storm. Brooks said the storm was about to break. He ordered all ships to hold position. Then he sent a final message to Earth. The message was short. We go forward. Laura's fleet moved first. Her fighters swept through the outer defenses like fire. The enemy was caught off guard. Explosions lit the dark as human ships dived and turned. The Leviathan followed close behind, its massive guns tearing through cruisers. Amanda focused on the readings, calling out targets. The ship shook with every hit. Brooks gave orders in calm tones. They pushed forward, closer and closer to the capital world. Council commanders tried to regroup but could not match the humans' speed and unity. For every human ship lost, 2 enemy ships fell. The battle raged for hours. The sky above the Council world became a sea of light. Laura's squad broke through the last line of defense. She saw the giant towers of the capital below, glowing gold and silver. She gave the signal to the Leviathan. Brooks ordered the main cannon to charge. Amanda hesitated. The reactor was beyond safe limits. If they fired now, it might not survive. Brooks looked at her and said that sometimes peace needed one last fire to be born. She pressed the control and the Leviathan roared. A blinding beam of white light cut through space. It struck the planet's shield and broke it apart like glass. The blast reached the surface and tore through the Council's command center. The world shook. For a moment, everything went silent. Then waves of explosions spread across the sky. Ships lost power. The Council's last defenses collapsed. The Leviathan drifted, its lights flickering. Amanda tried to stabilize the core, but alarm screamed. She told Brooks the ship was dying. He ordered all crew to evacuate. She refused to leave. Someone had to control the shutdown manually. Laura saw the Leviathan burning from her cockpit. She tried to reach them, but enemy fire blocked her path. Brooks sent one final message to her. He thanked her for her courage and told her to lead what was left of the fleet home. Then his signal went dark. The Leviathan shone brighter and brighter until it became a star. When it finally exploded, the light could be seen from every corner of the system. The Council's capital was gone. Their empire fell with it. The surviving human ships turned and began the long journey back. Laura watched the light fade behind them. Her eyes were wet, but her voice stayed steady. She told her crew that the mission was done. They had ended the war. Back on Earth, when the news arrived, people wept and cheered at the same time. They had won, but at a great cost. Brooks, Amanda, and thousands of others were gone. The Leviathan had given everything to bring peace. As months passed, the galaxy changed. Without the Council's rule, many worlds declared freedom. Some asked to join the new Federation. Others wanted to rebuild on their own. Humanity was no longer seen as reckless. They were seen as strong and unbreakable. Laura returned to Earth and stood before the ocean where she had once trained. She thought of Brooks and Amanda and Ryan. She whispered that the war was over, but the duty to protect peace would never end. Above her, the stars shimmered quietly. For the first time, they did not look cold. They looked like home. The war was over, but the silence that followed felt strange and heavy. The stars that had burned with fire now seemed calm again. Captain Laura Mitchell stood on the balcony of the Federation Hall looking up at the night sky. She could still see the faint light of the Leviathan's last explosion in her mind. It had ended the war, but it had also taken so much. She closed her eyes and remembered the faces of Admiral Brooks, Dr. Amanda Lewis, and so many others who never came home. The world was free, but freedom had a price that would never be forgotten. Earth was no longer the same. Cities that had once feared alien power now stood united and strong. Flags of the Federation waved in every place. People walked with new pride in their steps. The old divisions between nations were gone. Everyone called themselves human before anything else. The factories that had built weapons were now building ships for travel and aid. The same engineers who had forged tools of war now worked to rebuild colonies and bring back light to worlds left in darkness. Laura often visited those factories and spoke with the workers. She told them that peace needed the same courage as war. Across the galaxy, the fall of the Galactic Council changed everything. Planets that had once obeyed its rule were now free to govern themselves. Some reached out to Earth for help. Others feared humans and stayed silent. The Federation sent envoys to build peace. New alliances began to form. Many worlds looked at Earth with both respect and caution. They knew what humanity had done and what they could do again if threatened. But Laura and the new Federation Council wanted peace more than power. They had learned that strength without mercy only built new wars. The council chambers on the former capital world were empty now. The once shining towers were broken and cold. The great hall where thousands had once gathered was filled only with dust. Laura led the first human delegation there. She walked through the ruins with quiet steps. At the center of the hall, she placed a small stone engraved with the names of those lost in the Leviathan. She whispered that vengeance had ended and justice had been done. The galaxy would not forget this place, but it would never again be ruled by fear. Back on Earth, new leadership rose. The Federation chose not to rebuild old armies, but to create guardians of peace. The first group of new ships was not made for battle, but for rescue and exploration. They carried medical teams, scientists, and teachers. They carried hope. Laura was offered a place on the high command, but she refused. She said she had spent enough years fighting, and now wanted to see what humanity could build when it was not at war. She took command of a new ship called the Dawnlight, designed for exploration and diplomacy. It was smaller than the Valiant, but built with care and love. Its mission was to reach out to worlds that had once feared Earth and offer friendship. Before she left, she visited the memorial site built in honor of the Leviathan. It stood near the sea where the waves met the cliffs. People came every day to leave flowers and letters. The monument was simple. It showed the outline of the great ship with the words, "They gave everything so we could rise." Laura placed her hand on the cold stone and stood there for a long time. She whispered a quiet thank you to Brooks and Amanda. Without them, none of this would have been possible. As the dawnlight lifted into the sky, Laura looked down at Earth one last time before the clouds hid it from view. The planet was beautiful and alive. It had survived what no one thought possible. The stars ahead waited like open doors. Her crew was young and eager. They had grown up hearing stories of the war, but they had never seen it. Their eyes were filled with hope instead of fear. That gave her comfort. She wanted this generation to see peace as something worth defending. Far away, remnants of the old council still existed. Some warlords and captains refused to surrender. They gathered small fleets and tried to regain control over scattered worlds. The Federation sent ships not to destroy them, but to offer terms of peace. Some accepted and joined the new order. Others continued to fight but found no victory. Without their leaders, they were lost. Over time, even the most stubborn gave up. The galaxy began to heal slowly. Trade routes opened again. People from different worlds began to meet not as enemies but as neighbors. Laura spent months traveling between stars. The Dawnlight visited many worlds where the scars of war still marked the land. She saw cities rebuilding, children learning new languages, and farmers planting seeds on soil that had been burned by fire. Everywhere she went, she saw people trying to start again. She helped when she could, not as a soldier but as a friend. One night, as she sat on the deck watching the stars, a young crew member asked her if she ever missed the old days of battle. She smiled softly and said that war had taught her one thing. True strength was not in destroying but in rebuilding. The Federation grew stronger but also wiser. It created a new council made up of humans and representatives from other free worlds. They met not in grand palaces but in a simple hall built on neutral ground. There were no thrones or symbols of power, only a circle of equal seats. Laura attended the first meeting as a guest. When she spoke, she said that humanity had been feared for its vengeance but must now be known for its compassion. The room was silent for a moment and then filled with agreement. The age of violence was giving way to something new. Years passed and the memory of the war slowly turned into history. Children learned about it in schools. Songs and stories were told about the brave crews of the Federation fleet. The name of the Leviathan became a legend, but more than the battles, people remembered the unity that had made victory possible. Humanity had faced the darkness of the galaxy and survived. It had found not only power but purpose. Laura grew older and watched a new generation take command. They spoke of peace with confidence. They built ships not to fight but to explore deeper into the unknown. One evening, Laura returned to the sea where the memorial stood. The wind was cool and the sky clear. She sat on the rocks and listened to the waves. Above her, stars shimmered like silent watchers. She thought about the long journey from fear to freedom. Humanity had once been seen as reckless and dangerous. Now it was a symbol of hope. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but she believed they could face them together. She smiled, feeling the quiet peace she had fought for finally settle in her heart. In that calm night, a message arrived from the new Federation Council. They wanted to name the next great ship after the Leviathan. It would not be a weapon, but a ship of unity that carried representatives of every world. Laura read the message and felt tears in her eyes. She wrote back and said that Brooks and Amanda would be proud. The message ended with a simple phrase, "The stars are open to us now." She looked up and whispered the same words softly. "The stars are open to us now." As dawn came, light spread across the horizon. The sea reflected the colors of gold and blue. The wind carried the sound of peace instead of war. Humanity had risen from ashes and found its place among the stars. They had shown the galaxy that they could be fierce when pushed, but kind when given the chance. And as the first rays of sunlight touched the memorial stone, Laura stood and smiled. Earth had kept its promise. The age of vengeance was over, and the age of hope had begun.